Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 50th episode of the Maple Conservative Girl podcast. My name is Danica, and today I want to talk about something that is super ironic and super embarrassing. A longtime Liberal MP and former cabinet minister Nate Erskine-Smith enters a nomination race with the full weight of the political establishment behind him. An endorsement by our Prime Minister himself, experience, and the whole system working in his favor. And he still loses. Not to another career politician, not to another insider, but to a political nobody. Ahsanul Hafiz. At the same time, elite political figures like Barack Obama appear at the Canada 2020 Gala. So my question is pretty simple. Is Canadian politics still being driven by ordinary voters and local accountability, or is it being shaped by an insulated political class that operates above the people it claims to represent? So if you like this episode, please share with somebody who you think might benefit from listening to this and subscribe if you like it. I'm now not only on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but I'm also on YouTube, which is a whole new experience. But yeah, this is episode number 50. So let's get right into it.
We've worked together over the course of the last year and a half. We've known each other for longer. And look, there's lots of things that distinguish you, but I want to name a few in all seriousness. One is you're a man of big ideas. You really deeply care about this country, and you made big contributions. But whether it's in healthcare, whether it's Canadians helping each other, whether it's making the economy stronger, whether it's standing up for Canada against the pressures outside, you've always been there. But because you're a guy who gives, big ideas for the country across a huge range of things. But one of the things that I've found is, and this is rare, to be honest, distinguish, you can have the ideas, you can have the hard work, but also to be really on the ground with your constituents, knowing what's going on, what their needs are, and working together.
I'm going to miss being in Ottawa and
Amen.
being with the team and making a difference there.
That was Mark Carney himself endorsing Nate Erskine-Smith for provincial MP in Scarborough Southwest, who has been saying since February of this year that he would like to leave federal politics to become the Liberal leader of the Ontario government and basically go up against Doug Ford in the next election. He does not like that he is not a cabinet minister anymore, and he wants a bigger role in politics. And we all saw this coming, right? We all knew it was coming. I've spoken about it on the podcast before. And now, Nate, he is not some fringe political figure. He's been a Liberal MP for years, since 2015, since the beginning of Justin Trudeau. He built a reputation as one of the more independent-minded Liberals in Ottawa. Sometimes he criticizes his own party, especially after losing his cabinet position to Gregor Robertson. Now, Nate has had a lot of tension with Carney since he became Prime Minister because basically what has happened is that Trudeau appointed him as a cabinet minister in December of 2024, right before he stepped down, and when Carney got in, Carney shuffled the cabinet on May 13th of last year, almost exactly 1 year ago, and he shuffled Nate Erskine-Smith right out the cabinet door and replaced him with Gregor Robertson, which is almost like a satirical joke because Gregor Robertson was mayor of Vancouver from 2008 to 2018, during the decade when Vancouver's housing affordability crisis intensified dramatically and became internationally prominent. Rapidly rising home prices, growth in foreign investment and speculation, insufficient housing supply relative to the demand, and increasing homelessness and rental pressure. And by the end of his term as mayor, Vancouver had become one of the least affordable housing markets in the world relative to local incomes. I think it took 90% of the average gross income to pay for the mortgage of a house. Gross, meaning before taxes. One can argue that it's not all of his fault, and obviously it's not his fault. He argued that himself. Of course, it can't all fall on his shoulders, but making him the housing minister is just it's a joke. Why does the Liberal government just insist on putting in terribly incompetent people into their cabinet? They're all incompetent, all of them. They all get shuffled from one place to the next. Melanie Joly, she used to be the foreign affairs minister and now she's industry minister. And then you have, what's his name, Champagne, now he's the finance minister. Before he was, what was he, the industry minister? It's just like basically musical chairs, political musical chairs. That's literally what it is. They have no idea what they're doing, and they're all doing a terrible job. Like, as finance minister, like Chrystia Freeland, she was finance minister, but she was a journalist before. Don't you want somebody who knows what they're doing in the position of finance minister? Like these people are all incompetent, and they have no experience. So yeah, if I was Nate Erskine-Smith here, I would be so insulted. He was waiting for that cabinet position since 2015. He's been an MP, and then he finally gets this golden cabinet position, only to be replaced by a former mayor who oversaw decline in the very position that he took over, that he took from him. Housing. What a slap in the face. And Nate said himself that it was impossible not to feel disrespected after being dropped from cabinet, and said that he didn't like the way that things played out, just didn't sit right with him. And politically, Nate Erskine-Smith represents a very specific version of modern Canadian liberalism. He's more like a left progressive NDP style kind of politician. He's pro-immigration, pro-multiculturalism, he's very urban, very Toronto, very comfortable with the idea that Canada is becoming a more globally connected and demographically transformed country through immigration. He consistently emphasized inclusion, diversity, respect for immigrant communities, and coalition politics in the GTA. That wasn't incidental to his politics. It was central to it. And that is why the irony of what happened next is just it's so embarrassing, but it's also just so fascinating.
Thank you for all the work that you have done, and I want to congratulate the successful candidate who will represent Scarborough Southwest, Ahsanul Hafiz.
Yes, you heard that correctly. When Erskine-Smith tried to continue his political career in Scarborough Southwest, he lost the nomination battle to Ahsanul Hafiz. Now, no disrespect to this guy, but who is he? Have you ever heard of him? He's like a Bangladeshi immigrant who apparently has 30 Domino's pizzas. He's obviously someone much newer to politics and without the same establishment profile. Now, think about that for a second. This is a former federal cabinet minister, a nationally known liberal politician who has been in office since 2015. He's a media figure, someone connected to the highest levels of the party, someone who is literally endorsed by Mark Carney, our prime minister, 30 minutes before voting began to kind of amp up the voters, I guess, into voting for Nate. And the man still lost. That alone would already be politically interesting, but then came the aftermath. After the loss, Nate Erskine-Smith and some of his supporters began raising concerns about how the nomination race was conducted. There were allegations about irregularities in the sign-up process, questions about voter eligibility, and claims that many participants, up to maybe 50% of them, may have not even been Canadian citizens. So, in Scarborough Southwest, 25% of people living there are from South Asia. So, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, a large number of people apparently do not speak English as their first language either. They're first-generation immigrants. Harrison Faulkner posted a picture on X that's making the rounds. It's a picture of a piece of paper with words in Bengali and the names of the candidates and the boxes beside their names showing who exactly to vote for. Harrison writes, Liberal Party of Ontario members are being given sample ballots in Bengali, which is a language, with instructions to vote for the Bangladeshi candidate at the Scarborough Southwest nomination contest. I mean, If you have a South Asian person running in a place where 25% of people there are also of South Asian descent, it's going to be hard for the white guy to win. Like, he had an actual opponent in this race considering the demographics. And even though Nate spent years supporting the exact broader political environment that made this kind of contest possible, even though he supported mass immigration and being inclusive and all of that kind of stuff, even if that picture going around in Bengali showing people who to vote for, even if that picture was not a real picture, they would still vote for their own kind. Like, duh. You move to a country like Canada from South Asia, and then you have a political election in your riding with a South Asian running. Of course these people voted for Ahsanul Hafiz. But that's the irony, right? The Liberals spent 10 years telling us that we are R-word if we don't want mass immigration into this country. Now, that is not true at all. It's just that we want our resources to go to people who are already struggling in this country. We want houses for the people coming into this country. We want houses for the people in this country. And yet they're still bringing in tons of people with like nowhere to put them. And then you have Gregor Robertson as the housing minister who failed Vancouver. You can't bring in 1 million people plus every year into the country and expect no consequences if you don't also ramp up every other social service that you provide and start building houses like crazy. It just doesn't work. The Liberal Party over the last decade increasingly oriented itself around demographic growth and suburban immigrant-heavy ridings. Immigration levels increased dramatically, political organizing became heavily community-based, riding politics became more localized, more identity-driven, and more dependent on dense community networks. And in many GTA ridings, that means mosques, temples, churches, newcomer associations, ethnic, business groups, and hyper-local social networks now matter enormously in internal party politics. That's just the reality that the Liberals have created through their own policies. And once politics becomes organized around rapidly changing demographic coalitions, no individual politician, not even a long-time incumbent, owns that coalition forever. That's the irony. The same political transformation that strengthened the Liberal Party overall, the branding that they ran on being inclusive and accepting all kinds of people, and if you disagree, you're a mean person and an R-word. Well, that may now be destabilizing established Liberal politicians themselves. Because these communities, they're not voting out of loyalty to old Liberal brands or personalities, they're voting for the people who look like them. Was Nate Erskine-Smith's head so big that he really thought he wasn't going to have any competition as a white guy in a riding where 25% of people are South Asian going up against a South Asian candidate? Like, come on. So suddenly, a sitting MP with cabinet experience can lose to a newer candidate with stronger local organizational energy. He goes into provincial politics hoping to re-establish himself after getting kicked out of cabinet and instead gets defeated in a nomination race. And the uncomfortable reality for some longtime politicians is this: the coalition that Nate Erskine-Smith helped build may no longer belong to them. You get what you asked for. You wanted mass immigration and branded anyone who didn't think that way as R-word, and then you lose to exactly what you've been voting for and preaching for the last 10 years. Ironic and, quite frankly, embarrassing. And then, to top it all off, Nate goes on to say this.
It's not fair for me to jump off the cuff, but I really have to talk to the team in detail, get advice from the team as to what they saw happen there. I've spoken to a few scrutineers already who said they've never seen anything like it, and it's unreal what happened in there. So I never seen anything like it. I need to do a full debrief with the team.
That's super vague.
I wasn't in the room. I was shaking hands and
so all they told you was we've never seen anything like it and didn't tell you.
They said they've never seen anything like it. There were, at one table, it was 50% of the people that had ID issues saying they lost driver's license, they just moved in the area. So look, I don't know. It's unfair for me to specifically speculate. I got no idea.
What about the leadership though? Do you have any thoughts?
The team as to what comes next in terms of, it was obviously very close, and we'll see. I don't know.
Can you stand it?
We heard 20 votes.
Yeah, it was shy of that. Just shy. 19?
So are you concerned about the final results? Like, you don't think this is necessarily the legitimate result of this nomination?
I would like to hear from every single person who's in that room on our team to understand what took place and what their feeling is, and if there is a legitimate reason to challenge. Obviously, given everything we've seen in the race to date, and some frustrations along the way with disallowing members, and then we see scrutineers in that room articulate concerns. I honestly, I have to do a full debrief with them before I decide next steps, before I decide if I really consider the outcome fair.
Was this process fair for you? Do you find it that you guys have been...
So let me get this straight, okay? When conservatives say, like for example, when Trump questioned the election results, it's far right. How dare he? But here we have a liberal questioning the results of the election that took place, talking about how it's unreal what happened. At one table, 50% of people had ID issues. Is he questioning the legitimacy of this election results? I mean, doesn't that sound quite Trump-like of him? How come they're allowed to question election results? I mean, I'm not questioning election results, but why can't a conservative question results but liberals can? Are they going to start calling him Trump-like? Are they going to start calling him R-word? Is he going to stop voting for mass immigration? Is he going to realize the consequences of what he's been voting for the last 10 years? Okay, now moving on to the Canada 2020 Gala this weekend, where Obama came with George Soros' son, Alex Soros, and all these left-wing Democrats who love leftist politicians like AOC and Mamdani, basically the arch nemesis of the President of the United States, the current sitting President of the United States. Tell me you don't want a trade deal without telling me you don't want a trade deal. Okay, so let's go through a couple of clips here of the gala of Mark Carney. Listen to this slogan mess.
Those whose politics is to destroy, to demolish, dismantle, they're not going to change their instincts. This is, in many respects, this is their moment, right? We can't match them by being timid imitations of them. We can't answer them by pining for an old order that's not going to return. And the loss of control that people feel that feeds our age of anxiety, it can only be answered by positive action, by building that which comes next. Through the crack in the bell, as Leonard Cohen said, through the rupture that the light gets in. In this more uncertain world, building for all, actual building, concrete, steel, and code is the new progressive politics. And our message to Canadians right from the start has been reflecting back what we've heard. It's a more dangerous world. We have to take care of ourselves. And as Canadians, we will always take care of each other. Building a country that's not just strong, but good. Not just prosperous, but fair. Not just for some most of the time, but for all Canadians all of the time.
Sounds like a bunch of slogans to me. He always has to say that the world is more dangerous and divided, the old order that won't return, and we have to take care of ourselves. But are we taking care of ourselves by pushing America away and cozying up to China and flirting with the idea of becoming part of the EU? Or are we just pew-pewing ourselves in our foot? I don't think we're doing a very good job at taking care of ourselves by turning away from America. I think it's irresponsible of our government to be doing this, playing Russian roulette with all of our jobs and industries for their own ego. Trump was voted in by the people who believed that he was the right person to lead the country because he's not a globalist. People like Mark Carney are globalists. They like the open borders and the leftist ideology, woke and all that kind of leftist, quote, progressive thinking. Conservatives don't like that because leftist ideology, I argue, is destroying our country and not just ours. In country after country, the UK, France, parts of Europe, you're seeing a rise in right-wing or populist movements challenging long-standing centrist or left-leaning governments because They're globalists. They're not proud of their country's roots, and they love open borders, and they want to be post-nationalist states with no core identity, just like Justin Trudeau said about us. Not proud of their country at all. And all the people, the citizens of all these countries, are totally done. In the UK, for example, just this weekend, Starmer, he's facing growing pressure from figures like Nigel Farage, who has positioned himself as an anti-establishment voice on issues like immigration, sovereignty, and national identity. And whether you agree with it or not, he has clearly tapped into a segment of voters who feel disconnected from mainstream politics. And clearly, the Brits agree with Farage because he basically mopped the entire floor this weekend. He wiped Starmer out to the point where it looks like he's going to have to resign from pressure because he did such a terrible job in the election. In France, Marine Le Pen's national rally has become one of the dominant political forces in the country, reflecting similar tensions around immigration, economic insecurity, and cultural change. And President Emmanuel Macron's central coalition, the people are not having it anymore. They can't wait to kick him to the curb, get these unpatriotic people out of office. The people are starting to realize what these governments are doing to their countries, and they're rising up and voting these people out. Across Europe and in Canada, you're seeing the same pattern. Leftist parties are defending globalization, climate policy, and immigration frameworks, while opposition movements are starting to rise and are arguing that those systems are no longer working for ordinary voters, and they're not. But you've got the media all over these countries basically calling the opposition movements R-word, just like they do here in Canada with Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. Instead of listening to the needs of the people, they stomp all over them by calling them MAGA adjacent. Like, we're all done with it. Conservatives are done with it. We don't care if you like Trump or not. Like, there's a lot of conservatives in Canada who do not like Trump. We recognize, though, that wanting border security and no carbon taxes doesn't make us bad people, and wanting to work with America does not make us bad people or unpatriotic.
But as the U.S. changes dramatically its policies, and that's the right of the United States, as it changes those policies, many of our former strengths have become our vulnerabilities. We still, to be clear, we still have the best trade deal with the United States. Over 85% of our goods move tariff-free across the border. But with American tariffs, so-called 232 or strategic tariffs, on autos, steel, aluminum, forest products, I could go on, but in these so-called strategic areas, those are creating deep challenges for our workers and firms in those industries that until now had been highly, highly integrated with the United States to the benefit of America as well as Canada. And our response begins by reimagining aspects of North American integration. And to be absolutely clear, Canada, like Mexico, Canada remains open to deeper integration, including options for Fortress North America in selected sectors. And to be clear, those offers are on the table. But if that route is not ultimately possible, we will invest heavily in new markets and products. We'll reward those who build, buy, and produce in Canada, and we will build new partnerships abroad.
So now he's saying that we need to work with America, but like last week, he was saying that there was a rupture. All year, he's been saying that there's a rupture and that our relationship is over. And his new slogan that I love so much:
Nostalgia is not a strategy.
Yeah, but getting a deal with America is a strategy, and it's a good strategy. There is a growing disconnect in Canadian politics, especially within Liberal voters and the party itself when it comes to the United States. And frankly, it's starting to sound out of touch with reality. On paper, Carney and all of his ministers talk about diversifying trade, doubling our trade worldwide, expanding partnerships across Europe and Asia, and reducing dependence on the US, blah, 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 blah. It's framed as strategic independence, economic maturity, all of that kind of stuff. I'm the banker. I'm the economic wizard that's going to take us out of this crisis that we're in by diversifying to the rest of the world. Here's the reality check that I don't think a lot of people really get. The United States is still Canada's economic engine. Not slightly bigger, massively bigger. Integrated supply chains, energy exports, manufacturing, agriculture, technology. The relationship is not just important, it's structural. You don't replace that with diversification. You manage it. You deal with it. You get a deal. You work with America. And you'll hear a lot of talk about broadening relationships globally, but when it comes to the single most important economic relationship Canada has, the approach is caution, distance, and you can't sit with us kind of vibes. And that's where conservatives rightly are starting to push back. You can talk about diversification all you want, but if your relationship with the United States is unstable, nothing else will ever compensate for that. No trade agreement in Europe, no emerging market strategy, no diplomatic pivot changes the reality in the short term. And we need help. The government, what Mark Carney is trying to do is a long-term thing. But okay, fine, do that, but also deal with America. What is actually the priority of the Liberal government of Canada? From my conservative perspective, the answer should be obvious. Stabilize and strengthen the US relationship first, and then diversify second, not the other way around. Because you can't opt out of geography. We have the longest undefended border with the United States out of all the other countries in the whole world. It's so frustrating when Mark Carney talks about reducing reliance on the US while simultaneously dealing with trade pressure, tariffs, or shifting American policy. It creates a perception gap between rhetoric and reality. He talks a big game, but dude, we're nothing without the United States. From the outside, it often looks like Canada is trying to signal, independence and I'm a big girl, I'm a big boy, we're independent while we still depend heavily on the very relationship that is downplaying. What a contradiction. The very uncomfortable truth for a lot of liberals out there is this: Canada's economic future is still tied to the United States more than any other country in the whole world. Everything else should be secondary to that fact, whether politicians want to say it out loud or not. And lastly, there's this other clip that I thought I really wanted to share on the podcast. So, with Melanie Joly talking just nonsense. So listen to Melanie Joly talking about how democracy in America is degrading.
And Pete, I want to say in front of everyone how much what you were referring to regarding, basically the system in the U.S. and politics as many is inspiring, because of course we're following every day what is going on, and what is going on in the U.S. doesn't stay in the U.S. It has an impact across the world. Obviously, here we have very strong rules, but if the U.S. democracy is not working well, it has an impact on all democracies. So just the very possibility of being able to change it, to amend the Constitution, is a very important message that, yes, I hope Americans want to hear, and I can't speak for them because I'm not an American.
How is American democracy not working well? Seriously, give me an example. How is Canadian democracy better than American democracy, which apparently is not working well? Because 1 year ago, we voted in a minority government, and today we have a majority government. But she's sitting on that stage saying that democracy in the United States is not working well. I say that democracy in Canada doesn't seem to be working very well. But then she doesn't elaborate. She says that democracy is not working well in America, but then doesn't elaborate. In fact, they all shake their heads in agreement, oh yeah. What does she mean? Because Trump, whether you like him or not, he won all the swing states. All the black people voted for him, even though he's apparently an R word. He won the popular vote. He won a second term after everything that's happened with him over the last decade. He won even though the media has been on his case, like they are with Pierre Poilievre. Like, how is democracy not working well in America? The American people made their voices heard loud and clear. They wanted Donald Trump in power. Maybe not the Democrats, but the Democrats had a terrible candidate. I'm sorry, but she was just not a good candidate. And the American people voted for Donald Trump. So how can you say that American democracy isn't working well and imply that Canadian democracy is working well? No, I think you've got it all twisted. So anyways, that should be all for today, everybody. I hope that you really enjoyed this episode, this 50th episode, my 50th episode. I cannot believe that I've made 50 episodes, and it doesn't even feel like work. It doesn't even feel like I can do it all the time. I love it. So I'm just getting started. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you like it, please share, subscribe, all of that kind of stuff, and I will see you again on Wednesday. Bye.